Welcome to the Scott My Show, a podcast where we talk about bodybuilding, health improvement, and physique enhancement. Before we get into the show, I just wanted to let you know that I do offer one-on-one coaching. If you're interested in working with me, I offer personalized coaching where I can help you reach your goals, whether it be fat loss, building muscle, improving your health, or all the above. I provide tailored nutrition, training, and supplementation advice, one or all of those together, with 24/7 ongoing support to help you every step of the way with any questions you may have. If you're interested, you can DM me on Instagram, click the link in my profile to fill out a form, or ask any questions you may have. Also, we can hop on a free consult call where we can go over your goals, answer questions, and discuss what it would look like to work together. The show is brought to you by Element Electrolytes, and for a limited time, the Element Chocolate Medley is available with 3 flavors: chocolate mint, chocolate chai, and chocolate raspberry. They all go really well in any hot beverage, whether it's coffee, tea, or just a glass of hot water. And I personally love Element Electrolytes, and my wife does too. We've been using them for years. They're a great way to help boost performance, to help you get in the proper amount of electrolytes for a day, and help regulate brain health, physical health. Uh, Salt is important for a lot of things, and just drinking plain water doesn't get you the electrolytes you need. So check out Element in the description, or you can go to drinkelement.com/Scott Mize, and there you'll be able to get a free sample pack when you use my link and help support the show. Thank you. This is a quick disclaimer before we start the show. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said here should be taken as medical advice, and please consult with your physician before making any changes to your diet, exercise regime, or medications. Thank you, and on to the show. All right, Ryan Root, I'm very excited for today. Founded hormonesforme.com, an online wellness and hormone replacement therapy clinic that's helped thousands of customers look and feel their best while dramatically improving their quality of life through research-backed and clinical experience. In a past life, Ryan owned and operated one of the largest UGLs in the world, making as much as $500,000 per week. Ryan's also a regular guest on the Anabolic Bodybuilding live show with Paul Barnett and Kurt Havens and Chase Irons and others. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to say thank you as well. Thank you for the education and the content that you put out. You're helping a lot of people, and you're helping normalize the discussion about these things, which is important, to help destigmatize the use of some of these hormones to dramatically improve people's quality of life. And it's very important what you're doing, what a lot of us are trying to do is just help people.
Yeah.
And it's really important. So I just want to thank you as well for what you do.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot. Yeah, I don't do nearly I don't have nearly the impact you do with helping people day to day in your clinic, but yeah, it's my pleasure. And so I'd love to start, Ryan, with just your backgrounds, even before the UGL stuff. Like, how did you get into fitness? How did you get into lifting and bodybuilding, and eventually leading up to like the UGL?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, so when I was younger, probably like 13, I used to get picked on for being skinny. I now know that I had low testosterone my whole life. But back 20, when I was in my teens or even early 20s, no doctor would even test you for hormones.
Wow.
It was so stigmatized that the thought was that there's no way somebody in their 20s or younger could have low testosterone. So we're not even checking it, right? And I think that's a part of the problem today is we don't have the data to show that, well, people in their 20s can have low testosterone. There can be hormone deficiency. We don't even have that data because they wouldn't even check it. So when I was 13, I got picked on because I was so skinny, and it made me feel bad. So I started hitting the gym just right about 13, and I never looked back. Now, I would work out. I had a really strong work ethic. I would work out really hard in the gym, and I would get about half the results of all my peers. Right. So some of my peers could just go in the gym once in a while. They would have twice the results. They would show strength gains and muscle mass gains, and I would not, where I wouldn't. I had to work out twice as hard to get again half the results. So um it all, so this led to confidence issues. Like I didn't, I was, I don't know, kind of depressed a lot, and I was always tired too when I was younger, and uh consequently I would kind of let people walk on me. Got no confidence. So one day in my early 20s, I decided to start taking some testosterone. And when I took this testosterone, I absolutely blew up. Everything changed. It dramatically improved my quality of life. Like I lived two different lives, one before testosterone and one after.
Same.
Suddenly I put on about 35 pounds in and 100 pounds on my bench in 5 weeks.
Wow.
It was crazy. I just hyper responded.
Yeah.
And which kind of, you know, what makes me understand that I now know I had low testosterone. My fatigue, lethargy went away. My confidence came. Now suddenly, everybody wanted to befriend me because I looked like my work ethic now, right? Everybody wanted to befriend me. I would walk into a bar and I would see people. I would see all the heads turn and then people part out of my way, where that never happened before. I was a plumber when I was in college, and for the summers, and I hated my job. I didn't like it. It was terrible. And I was not good at my job either. And suddenly my boss gave me a raise for no other reason than I stood before him looking stout now. It was just like I started to see this different world of when your work ethic, your physicality catches up with your work ethic, and then and confidence too. It was also in the way I presented myself. So again, just absolute dramatic improvement in quality of life. So I happened to be in college. I was always a science guy, so I happened to be in college for biochemistry at the time, and I had to know, like, why is this happening to me? Why is nobody talking about this? Like, what is going on? So I just started to read voraciously, and I couldn't put the books down. I couldn't stop just learning and educating myself about what's going on here. And pretty soon, I started to be able to help other people with what I was learning. I started to realize that, okay, now I know more about this than anybody else around me. I was also just very adept at befriending people. I kind of am a social chameleon, so I was able to start nailing down supply chains, and I started just to find better deals than everybody locally, and so I was able to start helping people, obtain their testosterone and everything. So I had this. I'm trying to think of where to go from here. So yeah, I was able to help everybody, locally, and I started to gain a name for that, right? Like now everybody knew that if you want to improve your quality of life and look the way you want to look, that you could come to me. And I just lived in the small city though, but you could come to me, and and this kind of started to drive my passion, right? Like I was seeing people, I was seeing where I was actually helping people, and people were starting to really respect and admire me for my ability to help. And their respect and admiration just makes you feel good, right? It's a dopaminergic response. It kind of gave me a sense of purpose, and then that's where I started to develop a passion for this. I guess I could go on to when the whole empire started.
Yeah. Yeah. Just quickly before you do,
Yeah.
I feel like sharing my experience too, because
Yeah.
so similar. Yeah, I was hypogonadal as well. I was 100 nanograms per deciliter for testosterone.
At what age?
The soonest I started testing it was like 24.
Oh,
And I'm sure it was before then. If you look at
yeah.
pictures of me like in college, I look prepubescent. And I was a college athlete. I was a rower. But I had a DEXA scan done when I was like 24, just because I was curious about my body composition. and my bone mineral density was 3 Z-scores below the mean,
Oh,
like below osteoporosis levels of bone.
oh
And
my
I ate protein. I worked
yeah.
out. I wasn't really into bodybuilding, but I worked out. And I saw an endocrinologist at Mass General Hospital in Boston, and they were like, "Yeah, we don't really know what's going on, but yeah, just keep eating well and live a healthy lifestyle." And I eventually like found Nelson Virgil actually in his books on testosterone, and started reading and doing a lot of research myself and seeing more endocrinologists. I
The,
tested.
the endocrinologist at 100 nanograms per deciliter didn't recommend that you take testosterone. That's absolutely insane.
Yeah,
And honestly,
no thought.
it's malpractice.
Yeah, no thought of that. Um, and this is, one of the best hospitals in the world. Um, and then, so eventually I started doing more research, getting retested, kept getting same result in
Oh
terms of
my
total test. And I eventually made the decision I want to start TRT.
God.
And I went to an in-person clinic, a very famous urologist, Abraham Morgenthaler. He's written a lot of books on
Mhm.
TRT, and he has a clinic in Boston. And it was an awful experience, by the way. I had to go there, like drive an hour, or I
Mhm.
didn't have a car, so I had to like Uber an hour just to go there to get my test results read to me. Everything was an appointment, and it was very expensive. And
Gosh.
then they started me on tests, but they started me on like 1,500 IU a week of HCG. And so my estrogen was through the roof. I put on like 30 pounds of water in the
Oh
first
my
4 weeks. I looked like a balloon. I looked horrible. And there are pictures from one of my best friend's weddings at the time. It was
God.
crazy. I looked obese. And then I eventually found an online clinic that worked really well, and they were very smart and intelligent. And I also learned more myself.
How
And
old were you at that time again?
I was like 27 when I
Oh
actually
my.
26, 27 when I started TRT. And then yeah, I was on 120 milligrams per week. And I was over 1,000 total tests.
Mhm.
So I was a hyper responder as well. And I did DEXA 2 years after starting, and I had gained uh 30 pounds of lean mass
Mhm.
and lost 16 pounds of fat.
That's
And
fantastic.
this is without like bodybuilding. This is
Yeah.
just 120 milligrams a week, lifting occasionally.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can totally relate to your story of being a whole new person. And
Yeah.
I started smiling more and
Yeah.
everything. It changed my life.
And it changes the way people respond to you as
Yeah.
well. That's probably what I noticed, like the biggest thing. I mean, not only did I had a bodybuilder's mentality. I used to do double sessions a day and work out for 2.5 hours every day.
Yeah.
And and I remember like I was like 155 pounds in high school. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't I couldn't get above that. Like
Yeah.
the most I ever weighed was like 170.
Yeah.
I took testosterone in 5 weeks. I was like 200.
Wow. Yeah. I was 160 pounds and like
Yeah.
basically skinny fat. I was 20% body fat
Yeah.
because
And
my bone
it's
mineral density was so low.
it's the way people respond to you. Like that's what I noticed. Like the biggest thing is like people responded to me different. Like I had instant respect, and
Yeah.
and people like wanted to be my friend now. And it was just different. It's such a different world.
Yeah, it's crazy. So
Mhm.
sorry to interrupt, but
No,
yeah,
no, I think it's great. Yeah,
yeah,
it's great. Yeah, that we have that
yeah,
we have that in common. I didn't realize.
yeah. And I think the work you're doing, and there's a lot of shady practices in the hormone replacement therapy world, but real clinics that really care about their patients and use evidence-based research and practices are doing are changing lives,
Yeah,
which I'm sure
thank
you
you.
know. So I think I have so much respect for it. But yeah, back to your story. I'd love to hear how
Yeah,
the UGL operation went kicked off and went from there.
yeah. So I started again, I started like just nailing down supply chains and being able to help other people. Um, and then I just became good at that, like just supply, and I still do that today. Like I'm able to just partner with where most TRT clinics, they just partner with one or maybe two pharmacies. I partner with like 12 of them. So
Wow.
therefore I can go find the best deals, the best, the best everything, and really find the pharmacy that suits individual clients the best.
Yeah, that's
So
really
I've just always been good at the supply chains and figuring things out like that. So and I did it here too. I found a supplier from China that had these unheard of prices at the time. At the time, these unheard of prices. Like it was just priced really well. So now I could go and a lot of the guys that I was actually sourcing from, I could actually start selling them products, selling all my previous dealers products, because now my sources were so good and the prices were so good. So now I just kind of took over my local city. Now I lived in a small city, so I didn't make much money or anything, but I, again, like everybody started to learn that if you wanted this stuff, I was the guy to come to. And if you wanted advice too. So like I became really good at helping people. Like, I didn't just give it to people and just, there you go. Like I actually taught people how to use it and what to use. And this is the beginning of all of the empirical data that I started aggregating, right? And this is what sets me apart, especially now today in the clinic, is in the testosterone clinic, because I've just seen this at such a vast level. And this is where it started. Like I just started seeing all this empirical data, and I could learn, just from being in the field and watching how this affected people, like how to do this. Um, so from this supplier I had in China, the prices were just were just fantastic. They one day, so interestingly enough, I guess I'll get into like the kind of the zeitgeist at the time, right? This was when I first found the supplier. It was like the early 2000s, and there was, at the time, everybody was afraid of fakes, and there was no UGLs, right? This guy was one of the first UGLs, sort of, because they were making their own stuff. And nobody wanted to deal with UGLs. They didn't want to deal with anything that wasn't brand name, because there were so many fakes. This is bad. Like the guys today don't understand how hard it used to be to get testosterone or anything. It was really difficult. There was no, you couldn't just go online and get it. There was a lot of fakes, because fakes were lucrative, because everybody wanted this stuff so bad. They were paying high prices, and people could get away with fakes. Like today, you can't. There's no real fakes out there, because there's such a huge online like marketplace, where if somebody trashes your stuff online now, then you're instantly done, right? And because I think another major reason is because it's so cheap now to actually just get the real stuff and make it. It's so easy and cheap to actually make real stuff. There's no reason to make a fake today.
Yeah.
It's cheap, it's easy, it's not difficult. Um, it doesn't make any sense to have fakes, but back in the day, fakes were rampant, and everybody was terrified of it. Everybody on the bodybuilding forums, that's all. That's where the discussion centered around what's real and where are the fakes, and how do we distinguish real stuff from fake stuff. This was like, it just dominated the discussions. And everybody was terrified of getting fakes. So there was only a few brands that were accepted. Like back in the day, it was British Dragon, right? I think Denkel had some stuff. There was a brand out of Mexico called Quality Vet that everybody used to use. I think there was like a to Tokyo, right? Things like the British dispensary, D-Ball and Anadrol. These were all, but so it was these certain, they wanted it to look a certain way, and they wanted it to be a certain brand. And nobody would buy anything else, right? So the source that I found, it was called International Pharmaceuticals, and they did make their own stuff, again, but they had a hard time selling it because it wasn't one of the brand names. So right around the time of that British Dragon went under, I think the owners of British Dragon in 2008 got arrested. Right about that time, these owners realized that they could just take over the British Dragon name because the real British Dragon were arrested. So they just started slapping British Dragon labels on their stuff and selling them. And it was, it was good quality. Everybody recognized the brand, and most people knew that International Pharmaceuticals took over the British Dragon name, but they didn't care because it was all quality. So British Dragon, whether you had the old stuff or the new stuff, it was all good. So nobody really cared. So now I had my source had British Dragon stuff, one of the premier brand names that everybody was looking for. And I had it at incredible prices. And I had started doing so much business too that I could talk them down in price. Like my volume was high enough where I could talk them down in price. So I was getting even better deals. So one day, one of my clients said, "Hey, I was on this online site. Can I say the site name? I probably can, right?"
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. So he told me about the site Eroids, right? And
Yep.
he said, he goes, "There's guys selling on there and your stuff is really good. Like you would probably do well on there. You should go check it out." So I just went home and checked it out. And I looked at this and I started doing my research. I started looking at the rest of the market on there. And at the time, again, like people were just reselling brand names. This was like still at the dawn of the UGL. Like UGLs weren't accepted. Not that I was the first UGL, but there wasn't many. And this is also kind of what led to my successes. I was right at the dawn of the UGL when they started to be accepted. So, so I started to research and look, and I said, I can beat all these prices. Like I can actually compete on this market. So I sat there and thought about it, and I decided, okay, like I'm just gonna try it, right? Like I'm just gonna try. It was actually a lot of work. There's a lot of work I had to do. You had to actually have a website, which at the time, this was like 2010-ish, 2011. I didn't know how to do a website. I had to go find somebody who could make me a website. I had to, I stacked up and there was all these like different little things I had to do. It was pretty difficult and it took a lot of work. But eventually one day I was I actually became a source on there. And they used to tag people with a source. Now when I first go up, when a new source first comes on, like everybody um bodybuilders can be some of the most like loyal bunch of people, but they also can be pretty I don't know, pretty against like the newcomers, right? Or somebody who so when I first like posted my list and say, "Hey, I'm here as a source," like everybody laughed at me. And they were just like, they're like, "This freaking guy, look at this, like he thinks that he can come on here." Again, everybody was so afraid of fakes. Anybody who's new, anything people didn't recognize, they were just adamantly against. And they were vehement too. Like they would actually become angry for somebody dare try to come sell them something which they assumed immediately was going to be fake. Um, so I kind of got like laughed at first for even trying to sell. And so uh I one of my strategies here was I picked like on eroids, they have these people who have ratings depending on how respected they are in the community.
Yeah.
And they have this point system, right? So I picked a couple of people with really high points. That means that the community respects them and they've been there for a long time. And I just sent them free stuff. And I
Yeah.
said, "I'll send you some free stuff if you come back and tell everybody that the stuff was, once you get it, tell everybody you got it and that it was good. You can actually review it." So I sent these, and I call them the ambassadors, right? I sent these three people uh, just free stuff. And sure enough, like they reported when they got it, they posted pictures, they did all this. And then like I gave them fast acting stuff on purpose so that it would work. So I gave them like some Sustanon and some D-ball or something. And sure enough, like within a few weeks, they're posting, "Okay, yeah, I'm feeling this. This is good. This is great stuff. Like that, this and that." And then so I'll go back and tell you, like when I first started this, like I didn't think anything was going to come of it. Like I thought like at the time I didn't make much money, right? I was living paycheck to paycheck. I could barely afford to live. I was still in college, or no, I wasn't at this time. I wasn't in college anymore, but I could barely afford to live. I was hoping that I could make 200 or 300 extra bucks a week. If I could do that, then I would have been comfortable, right? Like I would have been like, okay, things will get better. And I didn't even think I'd be able to make that. I was like, I don't think this is probably not going to work out. Maybe I'll get a couple extra customers here and there, but this is, I just didn't think it would yield much. So after I sent those ambassadors this stuff, and then they started posting, like all of a sudden one day I woke up and I have all these emails start flying in, and I have these people actually making orders, and they're actually sending me money within, again. So I'm trying to think, I don't even know. I probably made, at the time I actually worked at a hospital. I only worked part-time, and I probably only made like $300 a week.
Wow.
And like I said, I could barely just afford to survive. Within 6 months of doing this, I was pulling in about $21,000 a week.
Wow.
It just blew up like that fast. I couldn't. I'll give you a link to post of a book I actually wrote. I haven't finished it yet, but I wrote a book that explains the story.
Oh, cool.
And so people can actually read like the whole story. It actually came out really well. I haven't finished it yet, but you can read chapters because it's on Amazon Kindle Vela, which allows you to just write chapters, and you can just post chapters. So I posted about 15 chapters, and you can read it. But like, I go through this whole process about how exactly it happened, and the book actually turned out really well. But
Awesome.
but that like I couldn't believe it. All this money that was coming in suddenly. And I remember at one point I got scared because it was getting too big, and I was just like, I was holding. I remember I was holding $100,000 in my hands, and I was like, I never thought I would ever see that much money, let alone have it in my hands and be holding it. And I got scared though. I was like, this is too much. This is too big. I'm gonna get caught. Like this is terrible. And I actually started, like, I'm not a man who's prone to panic attacks, but if I ever had one, it was at that time. And I remember just sitting down and putting my hands in my head, just saying, I got to quit. Okay. And I started a plan. Like I was like, one of the problems was that, well, here, I started to make a plan. Like I was like, okay, I'm going to fill all the orders that I have currently, but I'm going to tell everybody else, like, I can't do this anymore. And I'm just going to shut down. Like it got too big, too fast. Like I couldn't, I got scared. And then what I started to think about was I used to get emails every single day. I still do, but this is when it first started. I got emails every day from guys thanking me. They thank me for making them a better husband to their wives, a better supporter of their family, and just a better person overall. And that stuck with me. Like that's what drives a passion, right? Is when you can see you're getting the respect and admiration. That's the dopaminergic effect of helping people, right? So what I started to think about in that moment was I have to go tell like my 1,000 or 2,000 clients or so at the time, it's probably how many I had, that I can't help them anymore because I'm having a little bit of anxiety right now, right? And I just all of a sudden I was like, no, I gotta keep helping these people. I'm not gonna tell these people no. I can't help you anymore just because I got a little scared. So I remember picking my head up and saying, fuck this, fuck it. I can do this. And from then on, I just went full force.
Yeah.
And then like, I don't know. Yeah, I guess I can go on like the start and how it got even bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I'm curious, like when did it go from you essentially reselling from these sources to like building up operations, like hiring people, and eventually you had labs at one point too, right? So how did it get to that point?
Yeah. So it's really interesting. Like a lot of my success did have to deal with all these little things that I did. And a lot of it, like, I think that this is the interesting part of the story. Like a lot of people at first, they're like, oh, how much money did you make? And what did you do? And like, and that's interesting, but only like superficially, like at
Yeah.
first, right? I think the really interesting part is this stuff, right? Is
Yeah.
is what separated me from everybody else. And also the mentality of going from poverty to profligacy, right? Like there's a mental change in there from suddenly being this person makes $300 a week who isn't much to now I have um you know probably 20,000 people who really actually almost to a degree need me. And people like it's almost like you get sycophantish people, right? And to go from the mindset of not really knowing your place and not really knowing how to help people to being very helpful to a lot of people. Like the mindset it's interesting to dissect that, the psychology and the mental
Yeah.
change that happens there too.
Definitely.
um so yeah, I was doing this all myself and I had a full-time job, right? So I was going to work. I worked second shift at the in the emergency room at the hospital. And I was doing like 3 to 11. And I would come home at night, I would answer all the emails, pack up all the orders, and then in the morning I would wake up, take all the orders, go collect all the money, take the orders to one of the post office, and then go to the gym and then go to work. And that was this every day. That's like all I did. It was just constant moving. And after a while, like I was getting so many orders, I couldn't do it by myself anymore. So I slowly was like, I got to start hiring people. So I slowly hired, like, I started to break it into these positions, right? Like, so I had a shipper, and then later I got chemists, but I'll explain how that happened too. I had a shipper. I just answered the emails, and then I started to get money collectors. So there's money collectors, shippers, and I even had people who received products, right? So I started to break everything up into these separate jobs. Um, the idea was that I was going to have all these separate positions and that nobody was going to know each other. So this way, if something broke down or if everything was going to be compartmentalized. So if one person, whatever, got in trouble or something happened, they wouldn't be able to tell on everybody else because they didn't know. Right. So that was the original idea. And
How'd
it
you
kind of
find
worked to
these
a
people?
degree. I'm sorry.
How'd you find these people to hire?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I can't. That was another problem, right? Is that I couldn't go on a searching for jobs on ZipRecruiter or anything
Yeah.
or anything like that. Certain, I couldn't hire people. I just had to take from the pool of people I knew, and
Yeah.
people who were willing to do illegal activities, and B who didn't already have full-time jobs that like the pool of people I had to choose from was probably not select.
Okay.
But I just had to pick from people. And believe it or not, I also did a lot of crowdsourcing. So I had a lot of people. I actually still do that today. Some of my best employees came from people just reaching out to me and say, hey, I would be interested in helping. Like they saw the operation I had, they were interested in, so like a lot of times I would just let people help at first. Like I would just say, okay, do this. And if you do it well, then we can talk about me actually giving you a job.
Yeah.
And then the people who were successfully able to do some of the things that I'd ask them to do, then I would actually make part of the team. Um, so yeah, so I started hiring these people. I started having this compartmentalized like system. And so one day my source from China, right? Like he would be a little flaky sometimes. And I knew that I had to like I could see like if this source if something happens to him, then I'm screwed because this is all I had. My name on eroids was called BD supplements because I resold British Dragon, right? So I was British Dragon supplements. So I was BD supplements, and I'm like, but if this source something happens to him, like every once in a while he'd disappear for a month, right?
Yeah.
And then come back. And then I would be like, so if something happened to him, I was like, all my eggs were in one basket. So I started realizing the need for redundancy. I realized the need for building a more robust system where I wasn't completely dependent on this guy. So I started looking um, at other brands to resell, but they were all expensive. And so again, what started to make me so big was just a few things. At the time, um, steroid dealers weren't masters of business administration. So at the time, they had some pretty poor business practices, and all I did was come in and institute some pretty simple, good business practices, and that's one thing that set me apart. I had quality products, which some of the good sources had quality products, but I undercut everybody in the market, so my stuff was a little cheaper at the time, and good customer service and fast shipping. Like, so at the time, everybody was using snail mail. Like nobody was using priority shipping. Like,
Yeah.
it's just nobody had thought of it. And I, just looking at Amazon, and one of the things that set them apart was their fast shipping. So I just came in and said, I'm going to ship it everybody priority, and I'm going to give them free shipping too, because honestly, a priority shipping was only like $7. And I was making, like, I had like a $200 minimum, and I was making enough money where I could just give them free shipping.
Yeah.
So, so the free shipping, again, the quality and good customer service, right? And that just started to set me apart. I remember people posting on the forums like, oh my God, I got this stuff in 2 days. Like, from this guy, you'll get it in 2 days. And then everybody was like, you got something in 2 days? Because everybody was sending it. It was taking, even domestically, it was taking like 2 weeks
Wow.
because they were sending it snail mail. And the stuff coming from China would take a month to get in. So when people started to hear that, oh my God, this one source will get you your products in 2 or 3 days, like, I just got inundated. And I just gave people free priority shipping, 2 or 3 days. That was it. And then, you just make sure that you send orders every single day. I'd pack up the night's orders and send them the next day. So, and that's what really started to set me apart. There's these simple, good business practices. Now everybody does, all the guys do priority shipping now, but they didn't at the time. So I was one of the first to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
How'd you figure out the chemistry side and like
yeah. So
building labs?
yeah. So again, I had to build this robust system, right? Because all my eggs were in one basket. So again, I'm looking at selling other brands, but one of my things was having cheap prices, and these other brands were too expensive. Like, I was going to have to raise my prices. I didn't want to do that. So I knew this guy. Like, I had taken chemistry. I was a biochemist, right? So I mean, I know about chemistry, but I had never made steroids myself at the time before. Um, I didn't even really think about it. There was a guy locally who had been making his own stuff for a while. He taught himself, and he had been making it. And I remembered having people tell me about his stuff, and they were like, yeah, and again, this is the stuff before UGLs, where nobody trusted anything that didn't have one of the brand names that they wanted. So he wasn't able to sell a lot, but he just sold this stuff in a vial with no label on it. Right. And the people who did take it were like, this is good. His stuff is great. It's fantastic. It works well, like this and that. And he wasn't professionalized enough to put labels on it. And I had heard about it, and he could, when you make your own stuff, it's so much, the cost, product cost is so much less. So you can make things so cheap. So one day I said, I got to go talk to this guy. Let me see if he wants this, partner, and he can start making stuff. I'll put it on the site, and I can pay him per vial that he makes or whatever. So I remember too, like, I went out, I got like, I hadn't told anybody what I was doing. Like I understood that one of the things that was going to get me caught was if our little crew talked too much, the local cops, like, that's what was going to get us in trouble. Right. So I didn't really sell locally anymore. And because the national game was just so much more. And we did a pretty good job of keeping our mouths shut. So nobody knew what we were doing. So I finally went, and I remember too, I had to get all this proof of what we're doing. So I grabbed like a whole bunch of money that I'd gotten from like Western Union that day. I had stacks of money. I had I I had my login to a source on eroids too. So I went and met this guy at a bar, and I'm like, hey, I got, I want to talk to you about something. We went out to my car. I started telling him what I was doing. I showed him all the money. I was like, look, I'm a source. Like, this is really big. And I started just pitching him the idea of if you can make this stuff, I can put the labels on it. Like, I'll professionalize the labels. Just make it. I'll professionalize the labels. I'll put it on this website. We'll sell tons of it. I can start. You can start getting paid some serious money here. And like, I remember the whole time, like his mouth was just open. Like he didn't even say anything. He was just kind of shocked at what he was seeing and what he was hearing. And for him, it was a great opportunity. So he said, he was just like, yeah, let's do it. And so he started making this stuff by the freaking gallons, and we're bottling it. And then I had a label guy. I just had him make some labels. And then, so interestingly enough, I put this, I called this stuff Matrix Labs. You can still look up Matrix Labs steroids, and you can see all my reviews. Like, we made it a little strong on purpose so that it would get a good name. And I also did a lot of sourcing for the powders. I can tell you how I did that in a second. But so I was selling the British Dragon stuff, the brand name stuff, and I had this Matrix Lab stuff that was my underground stuff. I put it on our list for people to be able to buy. I didn't think that it would sell, because again, it's not a brand name, and I thought it would take a long time for people to warm up to the idea of taking a different brand. I sold it a little bit cheaper, just a little bit cheaper, but the profit margin was massive, because you can make I used to make 20 milliliter vials. That's what also had me stand out, as I didn't make 10s. I made 20s. And but we could make one of those for like $3 or $4. And at the time too, we were selling them for like 100. So like the profit margin was just massive.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you could sell that for 100 anymore, but again, stuff was a little more expensive. It's like, testosterone is so cheap now. I can't believe it. But so our profit margin was just massive. So again, I thought that people were going to have a problem with the name, but it turned out, which I didn't foresee this, but it turns out that I was the brand, that people trusted me. All right. And whatever I put out there, people would buy. And I took that seriously too. I did a lot of sourcing for quality. So everything I put out there, I made sure was quality. But in no time, like that, people just switched right to the Matrix Labs. And pretty soon, nobody was buying the British Dragon anymore. Everybody was just buying the Matrix Labs. I had it a little stronger, and everybody just immediately switched to the Matrix Labs, and we were just that stuff was going nuts. It started running rampant like fire through the pro circuit. I had pros like getting to me, being like, man, this stuff is running all through our circuit. It's fire. Everybody's using it, So I don't know if it's ironically, coincidentally, or whatever you want to call it. Luckily, I'm going to say just a few months after I introduced the Matrix Lab, sure enough, that BD source disappeared. He just disappeared for good. Had I not done it at that time, we would have just been done.
Yeah.
Right there. That was luck. I mean, yeah. I happened to introduce this new brand. So all of a sudden we went from, now we don't have BD, and it's all this Matrix Labs, and that's all we had. And that stuff was just running through. Like, everybody was just talking about it in every single forum. This Matrix Lab stuff is fire. Like I said, we made it. So I started sourcing too. So once you become a source on eroids and you start getting bigger, these Chinese suppliers, they come to you and they want to sell you their products. So I would just take samples from all of them. I was like, send me samples. They would send me 10 grams of powder or whatever. And so we would make it all, and we had them all separated, and we'd make them, and then we'd kind of try it ourselves just to see And then I would use the crowd again. Like once we tried it on ourselves a few times and said, okay, this looks okay. Then I would use the crowdsourcing and I'd offer people deals to take testosterone and in a certain amount of time, go get your testosterone levels checked. And I wanted to see, because at the time we didn't have labs. You can send it to Janko labs or whatever labs nowadays. You couldn't do that back then. There was no labs that would test your testosterone.
Interesting.
So we had to do it the old fashioned way. I would see how much it raised people's testosterone. And from doing that, I crowdsourced. Hundreds of people were helping me throughout our client base. And I would take the ones that consistently got the best. I narrowed it down to about 3 suppliers, and I just kept those 3 suppliers. So I mean, there was like I weeded through hundreds of suppliers. So I mean, there's a good chance that at that time we had the best quality stuff because nobody else was doing sourcing quality control like we were.
Yeah.
Again, there was no labs testing stuff. We were the only ones doing quality control like that. So we probably had the best stuff in the world at the time.
Yeah.
And I did the same thing for human growth hormone too. So we get all this human growth hormone. I would send it to people, tell them to take 10 IUs. 3 hours later, go get your HGH tested. And I wanted to see where the number came. And we would just take the best stuff out of 100 different sources, HGH sources. The ones that were most consistently the highest, we kept those. And so we had really good HGH too.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. And then, so I just kept building. And so pretty soon I couldn't do it with just one chemist and one shipper. I started hiring shippers. And again, the idea was the compartmentalization. So, and I also realized that if we were all in one spot, if one person went down, the whole thing would go down. So I started spreading it throughout the entire country. So we had people all throughout the United States. At one time, I had 5 chemists, 5 or 6 shippers, an army of people collecting money all over the place. Because Bitcoin was a thing, but nobody used it back then.
Yeah.
So I didn't use Bitcoin. Now everybody uses Bitcoin, and collecting money is a lot easier. But I used to have to collect Western Unions, and we used those little green dot cards. And it was actually a problem to collect money. I remember at one point we were collecting so much money that I couldn't collect it anymore. It was hard. It's a stupid problem to have, but collecting that much money anonymously is really tough.
Yeah.
Western Union will flag people after they collect like $20,000 a year. So and shit, by the end, we were making like 10 million a year.
Wow.
By the end. So it was like, I had to have an army of people collecting money. And these green dot cards are these little, I don't know if anybody knows what they are, but you get like a reloadable credit card essentially, and people can get a code. They load money onto this code, and then they can send you the code, and it will load the amount of money onto your card. I had like 30 of those myself. I had like 10 or 20 people with handfuls of cards, like all collecting money. Then they would go to the ATM, pull the cash out, and come bring me the cash every week.
Wow.
I just had like money collectors, and we were getting like 10 kilos of powder in a week too. So I had to have people all over the place. And I was paying people just to have powders sent to their house, and then they'd bring it to our chemists.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So prior to Operation Cyber Juice, that was the name of it, right?
Yeah, that was the operation that we eventually
have any close calls prior to that?
Yeah, so there were some, but so I'll tell you about one that actually started the investigation for Operation Cyber Juice. So again, the idea was to compartmentalize everything. And so I had a bunch of different people doing different jobs, and none of them were supposed to know each other. Now, I had one person who was a personal assistant of mine, and because I was working so much, I didn't have any time to do anything, like even shopping. Or I like throughout this, I bought like 5 houses too. And I was like remodeling a lot of them and doing a lot of stuff. So I had just a personal assistant just doing all the stuff, like go buy a bunch of fridges and have them taken over to this house over here, or have them put in each one of the houses or something like that. I had people doing stuff like that. Well, one of the personal assistants started to catch wind just from, doing a lot of stuff for me of what I was doing. And then she started to get an idea of how much money these people were making who were working for me. And then she kind of learned what it was too. And then so she wanted in. She was like, I want to make this much money. So I was like, I'll do this. I don't care. And I was like, all right. So I gave her the opportunity. I made her a shipper. And the problem was that she knew everybody because she was, she was my personal assistant, and she was just able to privy to information that other people didn't have. So one day, what we had is, and this is another mistake I made, which I changed after this, but it turned out didn't matter. I had chemists in different state, and they would vacuum seal everything and put it in bubble wrap, and then ship boxes of finished product to somebody to a shipper in a different state. So chemists would make it, they'd ship it to a shipper. And one of the mistakes I made is I had him ship it directly to the shipper. So what happened is one time, and they must have destroyed this box because, like I said, we vacuum sealed these packages and all kinds of bubble wrap. And somehow they must have destroyed this package, but a few of the vials broke and it leaked through the box. And the USPS, they're allowed to open a box if it's leaking, so they can make sure it's nothing hazardous. Like otherwise they can't open the box, right? Yeah. But they can to make sure it's nothing hazardous. So they opened the box, they saw it was in there. They sent DEA to the house, and I sent it to the shipper's house. But the post office actually called us and said, hey, we're opening this box because it's leaking. And we're like, oh, no, don't. And we were like, no, we have to. We're like, oh, shit. So we actually got a head start on cleaning the house out. Yeah. But it had all this shipping and finished product and stuff in there. I actually didn't live in the area. I lived in New York City at the time. And this was happening in upstate New York. So I sent people to help this girl get all the stuff out of her house. And they almost made it, but at the last minute, the DEA shows up, and they had a little bit of shipping and a little bit of finished product on them, not a lot. So they ended up arresting the two people that were there. And but again, it was not a lot of stuff, and they couldn't charge them for the stuff that came because nobody possessed it. Yeah. So they only charged them for what was there, and it was just a low-level felony that they would have gotten reduced to just, what we call here a ACDC. I think it's a conditional discharge, okay. Right? Where the charge is just discharged in 6 months if you have good behavior, right? So nothing would have happened. Nobody spent a day in jail or anything, but they scared this girl. They started warning her about, or cops do what cops do, and they just scared the shit out of this girl, and she just blew the whole thing in, everything that she knew, which was, this is like the only person who probably knew everything, like the whole operation. So the other person was arrested too, but he didn't say anything. He was just like, I don't know anything. I don't know what's going on. I don't know anything. So I got him a lawyer, and then through the lawyer, we were keeping tabs on what was going on. But obviously we shut down the whole operation at that time. I was keeping tabs at what was going on, and the lawyer was feeding us information, and he was like, it doesn't look like the feds are going to pick this up. It wasn't quite enough. Yeah. Because they got like three boxes, probably 100. They probably got like 300 20-milliliter vials, probably like, I don't know, 30. I don't know, it was probably like a few $100,000 worth of stuff. But they didn't it didn't look like the feds were going to pick it up, and the lawyer was telling us that. I think this is it. These two people are going to get the low-level felonies which will be discharged. Yeah. And that's it. So everybody, the whole crew started calling me and be like, hey, let's get going. It's like, we'll just stay out of that area in New York, but it's just going to stay there. So I was like, okay, let's get it going again. So we freaking started everything back up.
And you didn't know at the time, obviously, that this woman was feeding all this information.
No, I knew that she said it. She told them, and at first they did want to see me, and they wanted to question me. I got a lawyer myself. Yeah. And the lawyer was like, okay, and then like I said, the other guy's lawyer was just telling us that it looks like it's just going to stop here. Like
Yeah.
they don't have any jurisdiction because it was just the local cops. They don't have any jurisdiction to go check into any of this stuff out of state. And they didn't have jurisdiction to do anything. So they're like, these people just got these felonies and that's it. So, and pretty soon they stopped questioning me. So we were just like, okay, well, let's go again. We'll just stay out of that state. We'll stay out of New York, and we'll just, because we had the operation throughout the whole United States.
Yeah.
So we just started up again, and everything went smoothly. It got bigger, and everything was going. So it turned out, like a year later or so, the feds did pick that case up. The Operation Cyber Juice did grab that case. But it took them like a year to decide to pick it up, and then it took 2 years of investigation to catch us. So we did like 3 more years. We went for 3 more years before they actually caught us.
That's great.
Yeah. So that, I mean, that was the start of the Operation Cyber Juice. I mean, we had some close calls, like so we had in our local area in New York, like people knew who, like I said, people knew who we were. And we sold the cops, we sold the physicians, the lawyers, like everybody. So one of the cops in our local area called one of the other guys in the operation, and it was like, you guys got to calm down. They're onto you. And kind of started saying like, yeah, we were in one of these local meetings, and they mentioned your names, and they said that what you were doing. And so that was a close call that never amounted to anything, because we ended up moving out of New York after that anyways. Like we moved the operation out of New York. So that was another like little close call. Like we were all kind of worried about that, but
Yeah.
that turned into nothing.
That's
but
good.
yeah. Trying to think of where to go next.
Yeah. No, I think, Ryan, actually what we should do is we should cut this up into 2 parts. And I'd love to kind of leave the cliffhanger for what happens next.
Oh, okay, sure.
Talk about your hormone replacement clinic too next time, if that
Yeah.
works.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool.